breakdown in relationship is not a good thing that happened to anybody, whether it's a male or a female. So we have to take care of our relationship better and with understanding. And when you don't do that, and when you don't have that right subject or right mindset, I would say, in that case, where you go? You go to a relationship coach. So my today's guest is a relationship coach who can guide you to how to have a better relationship with your partner. And she is a teacher as well, so she has a lot to say about Victorian and Australian teaching system, and she also have to say a lot about her own Australian journey. I'm Krunal Nayak, welcoming you on our today's podcast episode, My Australian Journey, with Monica Kalra. Hello, everybody. This is Krunal Nayak here again. I welcome you all in our My Australian Journey. And today's guest, Monica Kalra, is a special guest, and she will guide us. And before my introduction was brief, but I would like to request Monica to introduce herself. Hello, Monica. How are you today?
I'm good, Kunal. Thank you for having me here. I love
Thank you.
being
Thank you
here.
so much for
Thank you so much.
getting precious time and joining with us. And I hope that today's podcast will guide a lot of migrants. And just to get started, could you please introduce yourself?
So, I migrated to Australia about 16 years ago from India. At that point in time, I registered myself here as a secondary school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
However, due to my own personal experiences, because I ended my 21-year-old abusive marriage, that led me to study about relationships skills.
Right.
And thereafter, I became a qualified relationship coach.
Oh, wow. And how long you been doing this as a qualified relationship coach?
It's been about 5 or 6 years now that
Wow.
I've been helping clients, especially women.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a way, I'm on a mission to empower women for successful relationships.
Great. So the term itself, for many people, young couples and all that, sounds unfamiliar. So people feel like, we are in a very healthy relationship. We are very good with each other. So why we need a relationship coach? What is the motive? Could you please focus some light on that?
That is a very lovely question that you have asked because even I used to feel that I am in a very good relationship because in our cultures, especially I'm talking about the Indian culture or even cultures, the other cultures around us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the women haven't been in previous intimate relationships. So, marriage is the first relationship that they are getting into. And therefore, it has its own positives. However, it can be very confusing as well because there
Right.
are questions about communication, there are questions about behavioral patterns, and we don't know who to ask, and we have no prior experience either.
Yeah.
And therefore, relationship coach comes in because in any relationship, there is bound to be a bit of conflict. And
Right.
we try to shove the conflict under the carpet, but then
Always. Always.
always. Whereas relationships are such that once the honeymoon period is over, they have to be nurtured. You have to work on them. And
Yeah.
we do not realize the importance of how much a relationship coach can help in order to have those healthy relationships with each other.
Right. Okay. So I got a sub question here. So let's say when someone feel that they need a relationship coach, and when they come to you, what are the basic services, I would say, you provide to the clients? Let's say if I'm coming to you and, Monica, I have this issue. So how you assess your clients and what services do you provide them?
I basically have two types of clients. So, my first clientele includes women um, who are either separated or are going through divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And my second clientele includes women who are already in a relationship, but they are struggling in that relationship
Right.
and they are longing for more intimacy in their relationship.
Right.
So, keeping these two clientele in mind, I mean, I love to help any woman who needs my help. However, I specialize in working with women who are from the Indian heritage and
Mm-hmm.
also from other cultures because these women are trying to balance their cultural expectations in relationships whilst living in Western cultures.
Correct. Correct. And in your opinion, how as an Indian woman, what how they are succeeding? Are they making a good balance, or still we need some sort of cultural improvement in that?
We need a lot of improvement.
Great.
We
Great.
need loads and loads of improvement.
Right.
And I say that because relationship skills are not taught in schools,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
we don't even learn relationship. We are generally following the relationship patterns that we've seen our mothers or we've seen our grandmothers do, and we're following the same thing, whereas things have really changed over the years.
Correct.
And there are lots more pressures on a couple today in today's society, and especially in a Western culture, rather than what it used to be for our grandmothers and our mothers. And so there are loads of difficulties so far as relationships are concerned in today's world.
Correct. And most of your clients, do they are they working women's, or do you see this need of help when they are not working as well? What is the common clientele?
I generally help the professional women
Mm-hmm.
because this being a profession, there is a service to it, there is a
Yeah.
fee to it.
Right.
And I've also seen, I during COVID times I provided, if I'm not exaggerating myself, I provided hundreds of sessions for free because
Right.
people were going through a very, very difficult time at that point in time.
Correct.
Um, and I have seen that once you provide a complimentary session, then people want to be provided more and more of it.
Right.
There have been women who I provided even up to 6 sessions for free because I wanted to ensure that during COVID time, because it was a very, very difficult time, that they were comfortable in the circumstances that they were in.
Hmm.
Uh, and I have also seen that once you pay a fee for a service, then you take those services more seriously.
Correct.
Till you haven't paid, then you take the other person for granted, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some of the people not doing the homework that I give them. Like I will give them some homework, make sure that by the
Yes.
next session you're practicing this, but then you
Yeah.
come back and they haven't done it. But if you're paying up some fee, then you're accountable, then you
Right.
want to get every penny out of what you have paid.
Correct, correct. Absolutely, yes. And then that's the rule. That's how the rule of law works. That yes, when you pay, then you value the thing. If you get something for free, then yes, people don't value that much as appreciate the things that they should be. Okay, now great. See, now, okay, so now you are a relationship coach. You are doing this. You're running your own website, your books. You're writing books. So tell me about yourself, how you get these studies, like how you get into this profession.
So basically, what happened that, as I mentioned to you, that I ended my 21-year-old abusive marriage. And at that point in time, I had to really look at myself hard and deep as to why my marriage became dysfunctional. I used to always consider myself to be an ideal wife,
Right.
and yet the relationship wasn't working and it ended in a divorce.
Mm.
When I started studying relationships, that's the time I began to realize that even I had my own role to play. It is very easy to point fingers at the other person. You didn't do this and you didn't do that, and he did this and he did that.
Right.
Whereas once you begin to work and understand the skills, that's when you realize that we all have our role to play. The other person can in no way affect you. It is your own thoughts that lead to feelings that lead to you being who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that led me to study relationship skills, only to be then qualified as a relationship coach. And
Hmm.
then I thought, this is now my mission, wherein I'm going to ensure that I help women to, especially after divorce. It is such a difficult time in the life of any person going through divorce. And I'm
And
not saying that this is only difficult for women, it's equally difficult for men as well.
yep.
So I thought that this is the time wherein from now onwards I'm going to help people rebuild their confidence, reclaim their inner power, which they tend to lose at the time of going through these difficult times, and thereafter learn the skills from me such that they can thrive in all their future relationships.
Good. Okay, that give me a sub question again. Okay, so let's say when a person feels, so have you ever encountered some sort of counseling session where, okay, before I ask that question, I have another question. So do you have to study specific degrees, let's say bachelor's degree or a master's degree, in order to become a relationship coach?
That depends. Some people prefer to do a degree in psychology, which is always very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
However, I studied only relationship school skills. So there
Right.
are skilled relationship schools which
Mm-hmm.
help you to teach those skills. So I had spent almost 2.5 years studying them, and then at the same time practicing it. Because the more I learn and the more I practice and the deeper I go in my understanding of relationships, that's how deep I can take my clients. And it's not the end of the journey, because work on ourselves is a continuous process.
Yep.
It is a lifelong process. So I'm still working with coaches, I'm still learning, and I
Right.
am not saying that's the end of the story, not at all. It's a continuous, ongoing journey that you have to carry on, because every time you unpeel another layer, and then there is another layer, and then there is another layer. So the more I learn about my own layers, the more I get to understand my clients' layers as well.
Right. Okay. So when you interact with someone, let's say you have a client, I'm your client, and you're talking to me. Uh, First, as a client, when I feel that I'm in a healthy relationship, what questions I ask myself? Give me top three or top five questions that should I ask myself, or anyone should ask themselves. If the question answer is this, then yes, you are in a healthy relationship. If the answer is no, then you are not in a healthy relationship.
Firstly is, are you aware of your needs?
Right.
The second question will be, are you able to establish your boundaries in a relationship? The third question will be, are you taking personal responsibility?
Hmm.
My fourth question would be, are you blaming the partner?
Right.
Are you being a victim in the partnership?
Right.
Or are you being the author of your life?
Right. Okay. So, and what about the answers? Like, what should be the answers? So, let's say go back to the first question.
Yes. So if I talk about needs, that's how I started.
Mm-hmm.
When I, it is ironical, but this is true, that when I ended my marriage and I
Mm-hmm.
started studied relationship skills, till that point in time, I wasn't even aware that I had certain needs that I could actually express in a relationship.
Right.
And that's a general thing with most of the Indian women. They are not aware of, or not just Indian women, but women in
Women.
large.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, they are not aware of their needs.
Right.
Um,
For
and
example.
yeah, so basically, there are four basic needs that a person has, and these can be called as the 4S. So, the first S stands for feeling safe.
Right.
So, it is safe, the first need. Second is seen. third one is soothed, and fourth one is supported.
Right.
So when I say being feeling safe, so am I feeling emotionally and physically safe in a relationship?
Correct.
Being seen means I see you and you see me, that we both understand each other, where we are coming from,
Right.
which is generally not the case in our relationships. Then it comes to soothe, where if we've had a rupture, if we've had a conflict, which is inevitable, conflicts will occur. It's a
Yeah.
myth to believe that in our cultures, we generally are told, oh, you live happily ever after. It's a myth to live happily after, because
Right.
there will be conflicts.
Correct.
And the idea is you have a conflict and then you repair and then you reconnect. And then again, there'll be a rupture, you repair, you reconnect. That's a cycle you follow. However, we don't follow that cycle. And the last one is supported and challenged, so that you accept me the way I am and I accept you in the values that you have. So these are the 4 basic needs that everyone needs to ensure that they are getting fulfilled in a relationship. However, the problem begins the way we are raised. So we are told to sacrifice ourselves. We are told that it is selfish to look after ourselves.
Yeah.
Self-love is alien in our cultures. And therefore, what happens is that a woman starts putting herself last on the ladder and she puts everyone else ahead of her. And this leads to a lot of resentments because there are so many things that she's not appreciating. But because that's how we've been raised, that you have to sacrifice yourself. And those resentments slowly, they become bigger conflicts.
Right.
And it
Right.
leads to the relationship being pear-shaped.
Gotcha. So okay, so let's move on to the second question. So
Yes.
this is excellent explanation. See, this is eye opening for, I think, a lot of women. Like when they're having issues and they assess themselves. This basic assessment, I would say, it is fantastic. They can assess themselves and they can get it. Okay, do they need help? Do they need coaching? So this assessment is pretty basic. So women's out there, please, if you haven't, listen to this self-assessment first. The question number 1 that you need to ask. And now Monica will move to the second question.
My second question was about setting boundaries. So boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are very, very fluid.
Right.
In very simple terms, if I can explain it, boundaries is the ability to say no. No is a complete sentence.
Right, that's it.
Whereas we don't do that. We find ourselves being on a treadmill trying to please all the time, creating so many problems in the process. Because we want to say no, but we can't. However, we have to learn that self-love and saying no are part and parcel of being in a relationship.
Right.
Even when we are boarding a flight, the first instruction that we get is put on your mask first. And then
yes.
you help the others.
Correct.
So it is about looking after ourselves first. When we are feeling happy and secured and loved, only then from that place we can love and nurture the other people. Otherwise, we are only creating triangles. And what do I mean by triangles? Supposing I didn't like something in the relationship. I'm unable to express it to my partner. Right. And then what do? I go and talk to my friends. I go and talk to my mother. I go and talk to everyone. So they become my rescuers. And the husband then becomes the persecutor. And I become the victim. So I've created a triangle where there is a rescuer, there is a persecutor, and there is a victim. And I've become a victim.
Correct.
Yes, I don't deny, go to your friends, go to your family, go to your relatives, talk to them. However, or go to a coach. Yes. Because the role of these people should be to ensure that they are not colluding with you, in what you're telling them, because that's your side of the story.
Correct.
They
Correct.
have to help you see your role in why what you're complaining has occurred.
Hmm.
And that's where my third question comes about taking personal responsibility.
Yes, please.
We love to be victims
Can you elaborate
because
that, please?
yes, and I say that because as a little child, a child very early on in their life realizes that when I'm crying, mom comes running to me.
Right.
So from there onwards, we've already sown the seeds of being a victim. The moment I'm playing a victim, I'm crying and I'm suffering, I get the attention of everyone.
Right. Right.
And so this continues in our adult life. However, it does not serve us in the adult life.
Hmm.
It, in fact, it becomes a problem in the adult life because now we are not acting as adults, but we are still acting like that little baby
Right.
in a body of being an adult.
Adult. Correct.
So, personal responsibility means that you have to take responsibility for your role in what you had said or what you had done before your partner reacted.
Hmm.
It's very easy to go and tell your mom and say, he slammed the door and walked out of the house.
Right.
And the mom empathizes you, poor my little daughter, she's, this is what he did to her. Whereas it's about taking responsibility. What had you said before he slammed the door?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
always about him. It's always looking within us. What is my role due to which he did that? Whereas we forget ourselves, we always point fingers on the other person.
Right.
So it's about taking responsibility for our actions, for our words, for our behavior in a relationship.
Hmm.
And it's about taking time out every evening without fail, 15 to 20 minutes sitting with your partner every day, where both of you are debriefing with each other so that you can
Debriefing
really
about
listen. Sorry?
debriefing about what?
Debriefing about the whole day, about
Right.
how they came across each other,
Hmm.
appreciating each other. What did you like in the other person? What you didn't like in the other person?
Hmm.
And that involves a lot of courage, where you're telling the other person that this is what I didn't appreciate. Not by blaming and being passive aggressive and belittling and criticizing and not talking for days, not like that, but
Correct.
actually making time, and both of you making time that after dinner we're going to sit down together for 15 minutes and we're going to talk and debrief. And this is what had happened, this is what I didn't like, and being really open and vulnerable and having that courage on both the parties, one who is sharing and the other person who's listening.
Right.
Most of the divorces take place, I think the ratio is 60% of the divorces take place because of lack of communication.
That's what I
Because
was. My next question was. You already answered
yes, yes,
it.
because listening is an art.
Right.
And Stephen Covey says that we listen to respond, we don't listen to understand.
Correct.
And we have to learn to understand, because when I'm saying listening to understand, I teach something called deep listening when I'm coaching my clients. And deep listening involves that you are listening not only to the words that are being said, but you are listening to the tone of the person, you are listening to the body language, you're really picking up all the visual cues as well. So you're listening with your heart, you're listening with your eyes to understand what your partner is saying. And there is no room at all for killing the experience of a person. And what I mean by killing the experience, oh, you shouldn't be feeling sad about that. I didn't mean that. You already killed the experience of a person.
Right.
No advice, no
Yeah.
blame, no complaints. Really accepting the person, this is how they felt, and just accepting it and empathizing and validating them. Once a partner has shared, then you can take your turn and then you can explain your role. Then the other one remains quiet and listens.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even empathizing and validating. Sometimes it's reflecting what the other person has just said, asking clarifying questions.
Right.
Did you mean that? Did I mean that? Did you say that? Asking those questions so that both of us are absolutely clear about what had happened and we iron out our differences. But that doesn't happen because we don't want to rock the boat. We are too fearful, too scared to open up and be vulnerable with our partners because none of us like conflict.
Just try and avoid the conflict, and just because of that,
Yes,
we
yes.
jump
And
into that, we avoid it, and that becomes bigger one, and end up
yeah,
having blast.
and yes, and we say we're trying to maintain peace by not getting into a conflict. No, no, no.
Correct.
You're doing just the opposite.
Right, right. So when it's happened, you have to say something. It's not you just keep quiet, don't say anything, and no reaction at all. So yes, talking every day. This is I love this idea. Like talking every day to your partner after dinner or whenever you have a chance. 15 minutes is nothing. You can always get that 10-15 minutes out of your time and talking to your partner, what's happening, what you feel like, what I feel like. And yes, and listen. You don't speak, you just listen to the other person who's talking. And that gives you a whole lot of new ideas, like what is other person is thinking, your partner is thinking. And they're not other person, they're your partners, right? They're talking, and you are a part of their life. So when they're talking, you have to listen. I think I would say that.
And that makes the bond between the two of you stronger.
Yeah.
It's just our fear that they will not like it. It's
Hmm.
just overcoming that fear. It's just sitting down and really talking to each other with your heart and the other person also listening attentively to what you have to say.
Correct. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So yes, these are amazing questions. Like the women's out there, or even men. Like
Yes,
this is applies to both. It
yes,
doesn't.
yes.
It's not gender specific. But yet, if you are in sort of relationship where you feel like, okay, do I have to assess myself? This is the assessment. Assess it. And if you feel a help, reach out to Monica. She's always there to help.
Yes, definitely.
So, if somebody wants to reach out to you to get the relationship help, how do they do it? What are the ways to reach out to you?
They can get in touch with me either through my website. So there is a Calendly account there, so you can book an appointment with me. They
Mm-hmm.
can reach out to me through Facebook. They can reach out to me through LinkedIn. They can reach out to me through Instagram. I'm not much on Instagram, but any of those platforms you can
Right.
use to get in touch with me.
Great. Great. Let's talk about your books. I think you have wrote two books, right? Two different books. What
Yes.
are they? Let's talk about them.
My first book is called How Do You Know He Is the One?
Mm-hmm.
And my second book is How to Heal from a Toxic Relationship.
Right. Which one you want to talk
Both,
about first?
yes, both of these books are now available on Amazon
Right.
as Kindle version as well as a paperback version.
Wow.
And the first book, How Do You Know He Is the One? Um, there's something I want to clarify before I explain, just for
Right.
simplicity's sake, and this is
Mm-hmm.
mentioned on the very first page of my books. I have used the manipulative partner to be a male,
Right.
just for simplicity, because then there is a uniformity in both the books. However, both male and females can find themselves to be in toxic relationships.
Mm.
So anyone can be in an abusive relationship, but for simplicity's sake, I've considered the male to be manipulative.
And then
So the
that's common, pretty common. Like the amount of male victims and female victims is drastically, uneven. So yes,
it is
that's right.
uneven, but I will not deny the fact that even there are men out there who are also in
Yes.
abusive relationships.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So how do you know he's the one? My first book, through very simple explanation, through various scenarios, I have explained 10 red flags that exist in a relationship. And alongside that, I've also explained the loving traits that should exist in a relationship instead.
Right. Mm.
So, and these books are useful for anyone, in the sense, if you've been in a abusive relationship, then it helps you to understand. Before I even go there, most of us are aware of the general bigger, the bigger forms of abuse.
Yep.
We're all aware of sexual abuse, or maybe the
Physical.
physical abuse or verbal abuse. But there are so many layers of abuses, the emotional abuse that we face, which is very common, especially in our cultures.
Yep.
However, because divorce is such a stigma, we continue to remain in those relationships.
Right.
So, to understand those unhealthy behavior patterns in the relationships, that book is very useful for anyone who's been in an abusive relationship, or if you're planning to find another potential partner, then to understand what you're looking into your next relationship, you've got to understand what the loving traits are or what the red flags could be, in order to discern between the unhealthy and the healthy behavior patterns. That book is really useful.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
When you say loving traits, so okay, give some outline for that focus, because yes, before you find a right partner, I think that's the most common mistake that I've seen in many of other people, that finding a partner, when you do not choose a right partner, then yes, so see, emotions and what we say, the young age adrenaline and oxytocin and that hormones make you get connected with someone, but then after a few years you realize, oh, this is not the one, this is not the one. That's something I was expecting. So when those young girls or young boys, when they try and choose someone for to be in relationship, it's not just the beauty, not just the money, not just the social status or their courage they show and all that, but what someone should look into a partner when they're trying to get into the relationship, especially when they are here in Australia, and if they are looking for a partner, what are the qualities you can list out that they can at least have a look, that okay, if that is matching my list, then I will go for it.
I think part of that I've kind of already answered, but I'll reiterate.
Please.
And also, there are two things that you have asked in that question. Quite early on, when you meet a person, you begin to see the red flags if you're aware of what they are. If you're not aware, it's your adrenaline that plays in, you are already attached, and you get into a relationship. So you can spot these red flags quite early on. That's one side of the story. The other side of the story is, it is possible that you are into a relationship that may not be toxic, and yet there are conflicts. So there are two things that we're talking about here. Because when we are little, when we are small, the way we are raised by our parents, we tend to develop our relationship patterns. I would have every child in the family will develop their own relationship pattern. When two people come together in a marriage, we bring our baggage with us. We bring our relationship patterns with us.
Yep.
And that's how one person's relationship pattern then triggers the other person's relationship pattern. And all of a sudden there is a conflict, which can be repaired the way I talk, through listening, through active listening, deep listening, as I mentioned. That's a separate thing. When you're talking about when you're getting into a relationship, the qualities that we are looking for in a partner is making sure that they're not gaslighting you, which is very common these days.
What is that?
Okay, I'll explain each one of them. So there are many of them. There's gaslighting, there's hoovering. All this is mentioned in my book. And that's why people are not aware. There's flying monkeys, there's future faking. There are so many of these various levels, and they're so common in our culture, and people are just not aware of them. That's why
Right.
this book is very, very useful to understand those relationship patterns. Let me explain you what future
Please.
faking is, supposing. So this is a manipulative technique where the partner who's manipulative presents a very promising, rosy picture of a very wonderful, bright future in order to get their needs in the present met by the other person, even if it means the other person has to sacrifice. But they keep showing you this rosy picture of what a bright future they're going to have. It's just a matter of days. Once I get that money, you just wait and see. And then our life will be like this, and our life will be like that. Whereas
Right.
this future is never going to be delivered. They're only getting their wishes accomplished in the moment
Yeah.
at your cost. And
Correct.
and this gives an illusion of connection and gives an illusion of intimacy to the women who are always looking for stable and long lasting relationships,
Right.
whereas they're only tricking you into it. It's just getting their wishes accomplished at the moment. And so you have to be very mindful that their words and their actions are congruent. If they're not in alignment, then it is a red flag, because this is how they will come up even later on if you get into a relationship.
Right. Right.
And then you have to consider and take note of how many promises have been broken and how many are you willing to accept that he keeps breaking them up. Are you going to continue to accept it? If you're continuing to accept it, then you are choosing to be in that relationship. It's a choice you're making.
Your choice. Right. Right. You're not.
Yes.
You're not raising your voice. That's your choice. Correct.
Yes. So, but being aware that this is what he does, and that's a red flag. You initially asked me what gaslighting is.
Right.
Gaslighting is a very, very common word. I think last year the most searched word in the British dictionary was the word gaslighting.
Really?
Yes.
I never heard that word before.
Yes. So
That's new to me.
yes,
Completely new word.
gaslighting that's another manipulative technique, and it's a psychological technique that they use, where they get you to doubt. The manipulative partner gets you to doubt your thoughts, your perceptions about everything. Like some incident took place, and after 2 days you tell your partner this is what had happened, and they say no, not at all, this never happened, you haven't got it right, no, this is not how it happened, this is how it happened. And they change your perception. They do it so often that after some time the person who's getting manipulated begins to doubt their own emotional stability. They're often told, you're mad, you don't know, you don't remember anything.
Right.
And then that person takes it on, and it becomes an abuse, a full blown abuse. And that's what gaslighting is.
Right. Is there any other new word that I can learn from today's session?
So many. You have to, Krunal, you have to read my book.
Yes, for sure.
There are 10 of them that I have mentioned
10 of
there.
the different types.
Yes, these
Oh,
are
wow.
just 2 of them that I've mentioned.
Wow. Great. Excellent. And what about the other book?
The other book is How to Heal from a Toxic Relationship. So there again, through very simple explanation and through various scenarios, I've given in both the books, I've given examples for what a manipulation looks like and what a loving trait looks like. For every one of them, there are 2 examples each. For both of them, 1 example for each one of them. And in that book, I have provided 10 skills and strategies that you can adopt in order to empower yourself in the relationship. Because once we develop a relationship with ourselves, it is only then that we can empower ourselves in relationships with the others.
Correct.
So, our initial relationship is with ourselves. So, how loving, caring, and nurturing we are to ourselves is how we will come across with the others. And the quality of our life depends on the quality of our relationships. And for that, we have to first and foremost empower ourselves through those skills and strategies that I've mentioned there.
Okay. Get it. So, which one you love the most? Which book you love the most?
For
I know
me,
it's your babies, I understand.
yes, for
But
me,
still, if
both.
I ask you, if
Both are interconnected, I would say, because first you have to know what is the loving trait. You have to understand those red flags, and then, because this is so common in our culture that people don't are not even aware of them, and then once you are aware, then you have the tools for your personal empowerment. And that's how you can really make sure that you have a healthy, long lasting relationship. So I won't be able to choose one. I
choose
think they're
one,
both
no.
interdependent. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it's kind of a chain. We can say it's part one and part two kind of thing. So you have
Yes.
to,
Yes.
if you go through both books, that will give you more clarity about
Yes.
the relationship. Great. Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Monica, for introducing your books and giving us a lot of information about the relationship and how to. Okay, so last question about relationships. So let's give some tips to our audience that how they keep the relationship healthy.
First and foremost is deep listening.
Right.
Make sure you're listening to your partner, and we've talked about this.
Yes.
So spend some time together. Even if you have to begin with reflective listening, just repeating what your partner has said, whatever they've shared, just repeat it, paraphrase it, and repeat it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we are not even listening to what they have said. We've already got a story going on in our head.
Correct.
And then ask them clarifying questions and empathize and validate with them. So first is deep listening. Very, very, very important.
Mhm.
The second thing that I would recommend is respecting your partners.
Yeah.
Even though we all say we respect our partners, however, it's about appreciating them. It's about acknowledging them for even the minutest little thing that they've done for you. It's just about saying thank you and please. We teach our children, but as adults, we forget to say that.
True.
You
Absolutely
know,
right.
just for little things like thank you for dropping the kids today, thank you for putting the dishes in the bin or dishes in the basin, or thank you for taking the bin out. For very little things, it's about getting in touch with their innate humaneness, just acknowledging and appreciating it. Who doesn't like being thanked?
Of course. You're
I mean,
right.
and leaving little notes of thank you here and there as a surprise. Let it be a game. Why do we
Hmm.
forget? Why do we forget to play as we grow old? As children, we were so playful. As adults, it's always about being so serious. Write a little,
Yeah.
write a little compliment. Put it under
Correct.
the pillow. Put it on the fridge. Put it somewhere so that the moment they see, there's a surprise element.
Yeah.
And that would please anyone. Finding a note of compliment somewhere, compliments that you're getting everywhere. And it's about giving 80% on both the sides. What I've generally seen is 80% women giving themselves and only
Hmm.
receiving 20%. And
Right.
men, on the other hand, sorry, for the first time I'm making that here.
That's
On the
that's
other
all.
hand, for
It's
men
truth.
as well, giving 80%. So both the partners are giving 80% to each other. That's how relationships become successful.
Excellent
And
advice.
the next thing that I would say, the next step I would say, is being really honest with each other.
Hmm.
Mistakes happen. So what? They are only your partners. Be open and vulnerable with them. Have that courage to have that open discussion with them. It's not about hiding from each other. And
Hmm.
all the other people in our lives, except for the partners, whether it's children, relatives, friends, community, they're all third parties. And
Yep.
I'm including children as well. Children are also third parties. It's only the two of you where you need to be really honest. It's important that you share about everything to each other first before it goes out to the world.
Yep. Yep.
So, honesty, deep listening, and the third thing that I mentioned was respect for each other. Very, very important.
Very important aspects. Right, great. So it's really insightful and deep information that if I'm doing deep listening, so I'm listening to each of the word you're saying, and yes, there are some triggers to myself, especially the cheat sheet things. That will help me. Thank you
Definitely.
for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
most welcome.
Now we are moving towards the migration part. So let me talk about your migration journey. So let's say you told us that you arrived in Australia 23 years ago. So how did
No,
you arrive in Australia?
16 years ago.
16 years ago. Oh, sorry.
16 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
I misinterpreted. So how did you came in? You migrated or you came here to study? How you came to Australia?
I came on my PR. So I had my
Okay.
permanent residency when I came here.
Okay.
And
That's
we came as a family here. I had,
Mhm.
yeah, so my husband, my ex-husband now, me and my son, the three of us came as permanent residents here.
Right.
And
And when you landed here, how was the experience in Australia? How did you feel about? Did your all expectation met or no? This is the wrong place. How was your first
um,
reaction in the first few months?
when I was studying in India,
Mhm.
at that time, I had the opportunity to go on a cultural exchange program. So the Indian government, um, there was a collaboration between the school that I was studying in and
Mhm.
with schools in England. So I had gone on a cultural exchange program to England,
Mhm.
and I knew when I was coming to Australia, and I had stayed in England for some time. And so
Mhm.
I had a very clear idea about what life in Australia was going to be.
Good thing. Yeah. Okay.
So
So there
it
was no
was,
surprise to you that okay, this is like
no,
some migrants come in, they never went out the country and they just come to the new country. So that was not a surprise to you.
that was not a surprise to me because I kind of knew that that is how the life was going to be once I
Mhm.
arrived here. But in saying that, I wouldn't say that even though I knew how the life would be, I wouldn't say that it was easy.
Oh,
It
why
wasn't
was
easy. It wasn't easy at all.
that?
And I'm
Uh,
sure this is the same with the other migrants as well, because
yes.
because there's been a research done as well now that
Mhm.
there is a grieving period when we migrate to another country as well. Deep down, the whole family is grieving. They're
Mm.
grieving for the country they have left, the families they've left behind. They're grieving for their relatives. They're grieving for the jobs that they've left behind, the positions of responsibilities they've left behind. So
Yeah.
there's an immense research on this that people go through a grieving period when they're, and this includes even children. Children are also grieving. We may not realize it. They're also grieving on
I
having left their grandparents. And yes,
Yes, and I realize that I think rather than adults, children are the most individuals who grieving from the migration, because for adults that's somewhere back of their mind, it's a desire for them to move, desire to go to the foreign countries and live there. But for children, they don't have a clue, and living that culture, living that diaspora around them, they straight jump into the new culture with new friends. And even if you change the school, when I changed my first school in my childhood, I feel stranger in that new school, and I struggle to manage new friends and all these. And here you're a different color, you're a different race, you're a different religion, and you are in the middle of nowhere when you're trying to find yourself an identity. It is hard for kids. It is hard, and then kudos to those kids who done well, and kids are doing great, and especially and okay, early age before 5, it's fine, but those school age children after 5, when they are in grade 1 to 10, and maybe in high school as well, that's the highest point where yes, you're absolutely right, and there should be a research, and I'll wait for the results. It should be, like, I'm not saying it should be, but yes, it
There
will
already
come.
is. There
Is
already
already
is a
right.
research about people migrating. Yes,
Oh,
and
okay.
yes.
So how long will that take you to get your first job?
Uh, so when I came here, before that, I'd already registered myself as a full time teacher here, as a secondary
Right.
school teacher. So I already had the full time registration. And I thought,
Right.
oh, now this is going to be a walk in the park and I'll get a job soon. Whereas that I applied for hundreds of positions. I
Oh,
think just like all of us. I used to be called for interviews. I would go through the interview process, and then somehow there used to be internal candidates, which is quite common here. So there are already internal candidates for whom the positions have been advertised, and they
right.
would get appointed. And so for the first 3 years, I worked as a casual relief teacher.
Three
And
years.
then, yes, for 3 years. And then I got my job, and it was an ongoing job. Initially, during these 3 years, I did get contracts, three months contract, a 6 month contract, another 6 month contract. So there used to be these contracts. Once the contract finished, then I would go back onto my casual relief teaching. But then
Mhm.
after 3 years, then I got a full time job, which was a permanent. I'm still, yes, and then continued working in that job.
Are you still working as a teacher?
I'm still working as a teacher.
Okay.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Then, yes, a lot of parents, a lot of migrant parents who are here. Like, let's say I'm new. I have a daughter, and I don't know much about the school system, how it works. I've figured it out somehow, asking other people and getting knowledge from other people. But could you please elaborate the Australian education system, how it works, to those parents who are thinking to come to Australia or who are already in Australia, that how the Australian education system works and how they can guide their kids to be in that system.
So, just like in India, we have the primary school and the secondary school. So, primary school is from year 1 to year 6.
Hmm.
In India, we used to say from class 1 to class 6. We call it as for here as year 1 to year 6. And then
Right.
from year 7 to year 12 is your secondary school or high
Right.
school, whatever you might like to call it. But here we call it as secondary school. Um, there are three types of schools here. There are the
Hmm.
government schools, there are private schools, and there are Catholic schools.
Right. And what is the difference between those three?
Um, so far as Catholic schools are concerned, generally people from the Christianity background, they tend to go into the Catholic schools.
Hmm.
Independent schools or private schools are, just as I said, they are private schools, but there's a huge fee that you have to pay in order
Yep.
to get into those schools.
Hmm.
And then there are government schools. These government schools are not like the Indian government schools. They are they have all the facilities possible.
Yep.
So even amongst the government schools, there are some selective schools here as well for which there is an admission test that is conducted when the children are in year 8 in order to get into year 9. There
Hmm.
is so there are four of those selective schools. There's Melbourne High for the boys, Robertson, Robertson for the girls, and there's Susan Corey, and there is Nossel High. These are selective schools, four of them,
Hmm.
for which you sit in for tests.
Yep.
And then, if you haven't got through in these schools, there's also a John Monash Science School, for
Hmm.
which you sit for an exam in year 9 to get into year 10.
Right.
But even if you haven't got into this, that's not the end of the world, because there's a lot of competition to get into these. And at the same time, children have to, um, depending on where you are living, because these are in 4 corners of Melbourne, so the children spend the whole day only traveling to and to come back home from these schools. So the government schools in itself, wherever there are some government schools which are very, 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 very good, they get such excellent results. And they've got all the facilities possible, so you don't have to put them into independent schools or private schools. Your children can definitely go into the government schools.
Right. So let's say selective schools you mentioned. What is parents wants to know what are the selective schools and what is the benefit going to the selective schools?
So the basic benefit is that there you will have the cream of Melbourne kind of going there. Cream in the sense because you get in through an admission. There's a test that is conducted. You have to clear that test and the interview in order to get into the selective school. And most of the people from the Indian culture are really, it's like a symbol to them that my child goes to a selective school. Whereas honestly, I did not get my son to even sit for the exam.
Wow.
Because I was living in a suburb where the school was immensely good, a government school, and they had excellent results. And so I did not want my son to travel to the city in the trains. And because at that time, when my son was at that age, we had only 2 schools, Melbourne High for boys, that's it, and the other one for the girls. So for Melbourne High, he would have to travel in the train, and I didn't want that. So I stayed. There are many zone schools here. So there are schools within a zone, and you have to live in that zone to go to that particular school. And some of those schools are very, very good. And I was in one of those zones. I, in fact, rented a house primarily for his education in that suburb so that he could go to that school.
Yeah. And let's say these selective schools, if the students get into it and by doing these competitive exams and being top one of the top ranker in the exam, and then they get the admission. So, and overall, like being a teacher's perspective, what is the outcome they get later on? What is, let's say, is that all doctors coming from those schools, all engineers coming from those schools? What is happening?
Not really, Kunal. Not everyone can be a doctor or an engineer. Even there, you do have people, who will be doing really well. You might have got into that school. Not everyone becomes who they strive to be. It just depends. You can become what you want to even in other schools as well. It's not necessary that it's only being in a selective school that you will become who you want to. I'm so proud of my son at the moment. He's doing his PhD in actuarial studies, and Melbourne Uni has sent him to Belgium, and this is his second year. For his second and third year of his PhD, they are sponsoring him. He's in Belgium pursuing with his PhD. So he didn't go to any of these selective schools, but he's done so well. So I'm really proud of where he is.
Studied in all government schools throughout his study period.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And still he's doing the best, right?
Yes.
There you go. So advice to the parents, bottom line?
Any school is good enough, so long as your child is dedicated and working consistently and regularly. Any school is good.
Right. So in other countries, let's say India or South Asian countries, anywhere in the world, there is another culture, that is tuition culture, that's also developing simultaneously with the schooling. So let's say parents who are, first question, is it necessary?
I don't think so.
Right.
Once again, our Indian parents put on a lot of pressure on the children to go for tuitions.
Correct. And just to extract out, more out of those kids, poor kids, right? Okay. Let's say someone's going to the government school, someone's going to these selective schools, and the third one is the private schools where you have to pay a lot of money, you just mentioned. So what is the difference that private school, I pay that to the private school, what is additional thing my kid will get by paying that amount?
There are very few students there. So you get more individualized attention
Right.
in comparison to a government school. In a government school, you might have 25 kids. You can't have more than 25 in a class. So
So
the
25 is
maximum,
the max in a government school as well, right?
yes, maximum limit is 25.
And what is in
And
private?
I'm not too sure. I think might be 10 or 11, depending on the class, depending on the school. So you get more individualized attention. However, I mean, I love government schools, and I'm a little biased so far
Bias with
as
private schools, right, right. Okay. No, that's
so.
fine. See, and same here. Me too. You know, I can afford, but still I chose to send my daughter to government school. And I had an argument with one of my friends earlier. He was, you know, we were comparing like when my daughter was younger, around 2 years old, and I live close to the Westbourne Grammar School. So there was a rush to get into it, and they say, "Oh, you are too late." And I've realized that as soon as your child birth happens, then you have to start trying for the admissions in those schools, right? So they say, "Have you filled up the form?" I said, "Are you crazy? She's just born." And so why is that? I don't get it. Like, let's say you saying it's expensive, there is no difference, and still people are obsessed getting admission in those schools, like not even 6 months earlier, 1 year earlier. I've heard the stories for some schools that even when mothers get pregnant, they just go to the register the school. What is happening here?
I am not sure, and I'm not part of that race at all. I mean, there are definitely more facilities there because they get a lot of, I think, funding as well. They get extra funding, and then they get funding from parents paying them as well. So I'm not very certain. Yeah, but yeah, I have no
It
clue. I
is
mean,
happening, right? It is happening. It
it is
is
happening, definitely
seen.
happening. Yes, I've heard stories too. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, moving on to the next question. Have you ever worked in any other job other than a teacher?
No.
No. So you've been teacher throughout your career and
Yes, I've
lived
been
here.
a teacher here. Yes, a secondary school teacher. I teach English as a second language, and
Oh,
I do my relationship coaching. So
wow, wow. So you teach English.
yes.
Wow, great. Excellent, excellent. Can I ask you this question? Okay, apart from your relationship broke down, what was the biggest struggle? Finding a job or anything else that you can for the as a migrant, I would say, as a migrant, what was your biggest struggle so far?
I think I would like to connect it back to the relationships so far
Okay.
as migrants are concerned,
Hmm.
because I was talking about the research about migrants grieving when they move to another country. So, so far as relationships are concerned, um, migration has a huge impact on relationships.
Really? Wow.
It can either strengthen your bond or it can take a toll on it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that would depend on how solid your partnership or marriage was before you migrated.
Yeah.
If your marriage was strong, you will have the same support coming here. But if your marriage was already not very strong, then it'll have its toll once it comes here. Because once you move here, there's loss of identity. There
Hmm.
is there are pressures to find a job.
Yeah.
There are pressures for children's admissions. There are pressures where you have to start from the scratch.
Yeah.
And in the process, there has to be a marital adaptation because of the change in rules and roles here.
Hmm.
Because once you move here, sometimes the husband gets a job and he starts assimilating into the Australian culture. And the
Right.
wife is left at home and she's isolated.
Yeah.
So she wants to go back because she hasn't assimilated here in the system.
Yeah.
Sometimes what can happen, the wife gets a job or the wife starts to earn more than the husband.
Yeah.
And then the relationship gets a hit because the husband starts to distance himself,
Yeah.
both emotionally as well as physically. When he's
Mm.
distancing physically and emotionally, so far as the wife is concerned, it affects her self-worth and self-esteem,
Yeah.
and it then leads to other problems.
Mm.
So it is very important, first and foremost, to ensure that once you come here, you come with the understanding that our relationship can get affected.
Yeah.
And therefore, we both have to support each other irrespective of what comes across. Because I would say that once you migrate, you actually do go through those fires of settling down here in the initial first 2 years. They're
Absolutely.
very, very difficult.
Absolutely.
And at that point in time, just staying together, sticking together, that yes, we are going through this period, however, this will pass, and we will continue to support each other irrespective of where we are heading. Because finally, you will settle down,
Yep.
things will work out. It's just staying together during that process and strengthening your relationship through the skills that I've already mentioned earlier.
Perfect. Perfect. Can I ask you this?
Yes.
What is the most memorable day you have in Australia?
There are so many.
So many, yes. But what you can list out? Few. As a migrant, I would say, as a mother, as a and a worker, that's okay. But as a migrant, can you please filter out some for us?
As a migrant, I would say when I got my full-time job,
Yeah.
my ongoing job, that was a huge achievement. When I signed the contract to get my house built,
Yeah.
that was such a huge achievement.
How
It
long
was
did
like
that take you to start building your own house after migrating to Australia?
I think it was after 6 years, because for 6 years I was staying in the zone with my son. But
Mm-hmm.
once he completed his secondary school and he could go to the uni, so that was the time that I had to now start getting into my own house and think of building one.
Wow, wow. So it was not that you haven't had a capacity, but just for your son's education, you've
Yes,
been living in that area, correct?
yes,
So
yes.
how you feel as a mother when you see a success of your child, like doing a PhD or doing academically bright. So what is the feeling? How's the feeling? Share. And being an Australian mother, I would use the word now.
Mhm.
Being Australian mother, what your advice to other mothers to raise the kids, how to get it basics right.
I can say so many things there. I think the
Please.
first thing I think that we need to be paying attention to is uh, being mindful of how we are interacting with our children.
Yep.
Sometimes we are so stressed ourselves, we forget that in the process, either we are neglecting our children or we
Yep.
are being reactive.
Hmm.
So
Adversity
every
being played. Yep.
every time we are interacting with our children, it's always being in the present moment, being mindful, being really mindful of how we are interacting, just checking in with ourselves that I am responding and I'm not reacting. There's a difference between the two. When you're
Yep.
responding, you're being mindful, you're being in the present moment. And when you're reacting, it's because you've got some stressors and you're bringing that and putting it on the child.
Yep.
So that would be the first and foremost for me, being mindful of responding to your child. The second would be make the most of the time that they are with you, because one day they go away.
Yes, yes.
And
And that's a
I
sad truth, right?
and I used to hear that from people, and I never realized that it would happen with me one day,
Hmm.
because they do have a life and they will go, they have to move on. And so I've reframed that bit. Instead of calling myself as an empty nester, I call this as more a blessed, matured nester now. And I say,
Mm-hmm.
I have a blessed nester. It's not
Right.
empty. I mean, that's all right. The children do fly out,
Yes.
even though it's really hard, but
Hard.
that is the
Right.
reality.
Yeah.
So make the most of the time with them. Let them enjoy their childhood. Don't put them under too much pressures of tuitions and everything. Let them enjoy his childhood and you enjoy that childhood with them. If you really want them to take tuitions, begin from year 10 onwards. 10,
Right.
11, 12 is the time when you can perhaps concentrate on their studies academically. But before that, let them be children.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'd say.
That's great. So yes, I got this question. People compare education systems overseas and here. So they say that Australian education system is not this, not that. It's not, giving the children the education, the basic education, and that's why when the kids are started studying in year 11, 12, then it's a lot of pressure and kids drop out, and then they go to trades and they don't go to the higher education sort of things. So what is the ratio from year 10 to 11 and year 12 to the university? How you interpret that?
Um, I've always heard that criticism. However, having been in the education industry for so long, I do understand that there are certain things that can be improved.
Hmm.
However, I still like the Australian system in comparison to the Indian system.
And why is that?
Indian system, there was always a lot of pressure on the children right from year 1 onwards. I
Hmm.
still remember my son was studying in India till he was in year 3. He was in
Hmm.
year 4 when we came here.
Right.
And I still remember every evening I used to sit down with him for hours to make sure that he had finished his homework. Homework occupied such a lot of time between the two of us. There were tests coming up. There is now semester test, there's monthly test. There were so many tests, even in year 3 or year 2 or year 1. And there was, and parents, when they come here, they feel, oh, we don't see that happening here because all
Hmm.
of a sudden there are no tests and the
No,
child
there's
just gets promoted to the next class. Yes. However, even if the children are following what's being done in classes, because at least from year 7 onwards, we are building them towards year 12. So,
Right.
whatever they're doing in year 7, there's already some base getting laid for them to move on.
Hmm.
There may not be that pressure, no doubt about it, but those elements have already been incorporated. That's how
Hmm.
it's all built in. So that's why I said let your children enjoy till year 9. However, from year 10 onwards, because I'm saying 10 because here the pressure really begins in 11 and 12. It's
Hmm.
just like the pressure you feel in India, it's the same pressure that you have in 11, 12 year. So that's why
Right.
I'm taking a year earlier from year 10 onwards. If parents can become conscious that yes, our child is going to go into 11 soon, whatever subjects that he's not doing well now, let's get him that tutoring so that in year 10 he's able to build his base because 10, 11, 12 are the same, exactly the same. They're on the same lines.
Right.
So that way they are then prepared for 11 and 12 as well.
Hmm. Excellent. So yes, this is confusion. I don't know yet. I don't know how to choose the field in Australia. Let's say in India, when I finish my primary school, then I go to higher secondary. Year 10, there was subjects I can choose. Some
Yes,
subjects like science or
yes.
mathematics. Then after year 10, I've got three streams to go. One is science, another is a commerce, and another one is arts. And where I, let's say if I choose science, then I go to the engineering, IT and all that. And if I go arts, then there are limited options. Commerce, if I go to commerce, I have chartered accountancy and all those future in progress. So how it works here?
Um, in in year 10, you can choose subjects for 11 and 12.
Hmm.
In fact, even in year 10, some children, because you have the facility wherein you can do one of the year 11 subjects in year 10 as well.
Right.
So
Okay.
you can fast forward a subject. which means that when you are in year 11, you've already finished a year 12 subject. And
Okay.
you are allowed, most of the schools allow one subject. There are some schools who allow even 2 subjects depending on the capability of a child,
Sure.
which is a huge advantage. I would highly encourage doing a year 11 subject in year 10, because that way when you are in year 12, you get some study time because you've already completed one subject. So you get some free sessions in school where you can concentrate on some other subject.
Exactly. Right. So you are
In
doing a subject in advance, basically.
Yes. Here there are 3 streams that you can choose from. So there are 2 types of VCE. Earlier it used to be VCE, VCAL, and WET. Now there is no such system as VCAL. Everything is called VCE now. So where one VCE is where you can go into the universities. The other VCE, which is called VM Major, through which you go into the TAFEs and you pick up a trade. And then there is a WET course, which is also VCE, wherein you go to school for 3 days, and for 2 days, you're doing some sort of an apprenticeship outside. So you go and attend your apprenticeship there. You can choose any combination of subjects from anywhere. It does not have to be all science or all commerce or all arts. You can choose any, but English remains consistent everywhere. So when you go to take admissions into colleges, and even when you're choosing these subjects, it makes sense to see, supposing you want to be a doctor, it makes sense to see what subjects are universities looking for you to get into being a doctor.
Doctor, correct. So you
So
choose those.
supposing they might, I don't know, I'm just guessing.
Yeah. That's okay.
English would just be there. English would definitely be there. But they might say that you have to have maths methods, or you might have to have chemistry. So then make sure that you got those 2 subjects for sure. Then you've got those 3 subjects and 2 more subjects. You have to have 5 subjects. So you can choose any of them. I would highly recommend Victorian School of Languages, because there you can choose your own language. You can study that language on a Saturday outside of school. And since you know your language, it gives you an advantage because you get higher marks in that subject. Higher marks in the sense because you can speak that language.
Correct.
And parents can help you as well in that language. And that is also considered a VCE language. So you don't, instead of taking 5 subjects in school, then you're doing 1 outside school as well on a Saturday morning.
Saturday. Great.
Yes.
Excellent. Good piece of advice. Thank you for that. And so the college you mentioned is Victorian College of Languages, right?
Victorian School of Languages. I think they offer 55 languages.
So is it a school or it's an organization, separate organization?
It's a school. It's a Victorian school, but it runs on Saturday mornings, and in some places on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well, depending on the subjects, in the evenings after school.
Great. Thank you for that. That's a good tip. Okay. You mentioned medicals here, medical entry. We have seen that it's getting into medicine is as competitive as overseas. And Australia needs doctors. Australia has colleges, universities who are, equipped with MBBS studies. And why is still compared? Like this is my observation is it's more highly competitive than India. Like if I compare to India, it's very, very competitive. And why is that? Why does Australia don't need doctors, or what's happening?
I'm sure. I mean, we all know the medical facilities here. We need so many doctors.
Yes.
I don't know much about this stream, but I do know that children have to take an exam when they are in year 12. It's a special exam that they have to take. I'm forgetting what it is called, UMAT, or I don't know what it is called.
UMAT, yes.
UMAT, right? So they have to take that exam. and very few actually clear that exam in order to get into a medicine degree. So yeah,
And
I
ATAR
don't know.
score is also required, like it's too much, like
Yes, it's
99.5.
99 point something. Yes,
Like,
yes.
and how's that calculated? Like, is it like student needs to score that point out of 100, or how is ATAR is calculated?
It is not a percentage. It is, um,
Percentile.
yes, it's a percentile, and your internal assessments also contribute. Like, I can speak on behalf of English because I teach year 12 English, so I've got an idea. Um, like we year year 11 and 12 is divided into 4 units. So unit 1 and 2 you do in year 11, unit 3 and 4 you do in unit 12, in year 12, and you have to ensure that you've done all the 4 units for English. um, so there are internal assessments in unit 3 and internal assessments in unit 4.
Hmm.
The internal assessments in unit 3 contribute 25%, and similarly 25% comes from unit 4 internal assessments, and that makes 50%, and then 50% is what you sit in your exam and do it, the final exam, and then all that is calculated towards your 8 hour.
Yeah. And that is also percentile. So the top
Yes,
one is 100, and your score is calculated accordingly, right?
yes, yes,
Hmm. Complex. Pretty
yes,
complex. You're
yes,
Australian are good at making things complex rather than easier, right?
yes.
So okay, moving forward to this question. Being a teacher, you teach in high school, right? Year 11 and 12. So just for the audience, Australian kids do not look like kids, right? So they look like a full adult. So how's your experience being a teacher outside of the like non-Australian Indian ethnicity, and when you teach kids, how you feel? Like what is the challenges first of all?
I can count many challenges. However, there's one thing that I know for sure, Kunal, that children are children, irrespective of whether they are Australian children, they
Right.
are Filipino children, or Indian children, or irrespective of any community. And
Hmm.
the one thing that really works with all children is respect and developing that relationship with them.
Right.
If you've cracked that code of developing that rapport with them, they
Hmm.
will do anything for you.
Right. Right.
I mean, they will play up. Ultimately, they are children. They will get into behavioral issues, no doubt about it.
Hmm.
However, if you develop that relationship with them, then there's no going back. They will work with you.
Right.
You have to respect them. They will respect you, and it all comes. And anyone can sense it. Just like adults, children can sense it. Are you making it up, or are you really truly respecting them and loving them?
Right.
And they
Yeah.
will get it, and once you've broken that ice with them, that's
Hmm.
it. You've got it on with you, and you can take them along.
Great. Great. Okay, give some success mantra for kids who are in year 11 and 12, how they can design their studies and design their plans towards, working towards their university or further studies. What are the main things? Because this is the age where you get lost, and
Yes.
especially here, the drug culture, the cigarette culture, the tobacco culture, and everything. So that is the age, they need most of that care that parents might be able to provide. They might not listen to them because the friends are the most influence at that point. So what's your advice to those kids?
So far as the studies are concerned, it's about being consistent and being regular.
Hmm.
Whatever has been done during the day, if you can go back and revise and work on whatever has been done, because consistency is the key, regularity is the key. Not pending it, leaving it to say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow and day after. We
Hmm.
cover so much during a week
Yeah.
that it's difficult to go back to. And these internal assessments are called SACs, so
Mm-hmm.
school assessed coursework,
Mm-hmm.
and they are happening all the time. So if you leave something, you will not be able to catch up, because there are weeks when children are doing 3 sacks in a week, and it is so strenuous, and that stress keeps building up. So it's always important for all the subjects, if you can sit down, make sure that you've done every work regularly. That's the key to it. That's it, nothing else.
Nothing else. So, Monica, thank you for all these informative and guidance session. I would say it's not guidance, but it is a valuable advice that we can get out of this. It is for relationship, for parents, for kids, and for everybody. You've been a mentor, and this session, whoever watches it in full, that will be a fantastic session to watch, and they can take away a lot of things out of this session. Thank you so much for that. Before we conclude, Monica, I request you to say something, any piece of advice for any human being that you have learned within Australia as a migrant, please.
I would say just make the most of each moment in your life. Enjoy the journey. It's not about reaching a destination. We are always concentrating on reaching a destination, getting a house, getting this, getting that. And in the process, we forget to enjoy the journey. So it's about enjoying every moment of our life. We will get to the destination. It doesn't matter, because once you reach that destination, you will have some other destination.
Yeah.
And here time passes by so quickly that we don't even realize.
Yes, it goes, like I, for myself, even I don't know where I lost my 16 years here as well, so it's been a journey, long journey. When I look back, oh my God, it happened like overnight. It
Yes.
happened just out of my attention that, okay, I'm aging, I'm getting older, hair's getting grays and all that, and kids growing. Yes, that's a good thing, but yes, time going so fast. I don't know why is that, but yes, it's because of the lot too many things we have on our plates. That's why it passes so quickly. So, but thank you so much, Monica, for joining today and having a valuable session. There's a lot to know about. In future, we are trying to start Q&A sessions, live Q&A sessions. So when we have a bigger audience, we will try and organize that parents can come out to you. The relationship, those who have relationship issues, they can reach out to you and have a live session, ask you the questions, and so on. So thank you once again for joining and having a precious time out of your busy schedule. And I can't thank you enough for this session.
Thank you so much, Kunal. My pleasure. My honor to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.